Everyone in that bank had called me the fat nobody at window 4 for 6 years. And on the day, the most dangerous man in the city walked in to find out who'd been stealing from him. The fat nobody at window 4 was the only person alive who knew the answer, and the answer was going to get him killed. If I didn't hand it to him, first, let me set it for you. Meridian savings, marble floors, worn soft, brass fixtures, a row of teller windows, the kind of neighborhood bank where the money is small and the loyalty is large. I've worked window 4 for 6 years, and what nobody in that building understood, not my manager, not my coworkers, not the men who came and went in their good coats, is that I don't just count cash. I read money. Every dollar that moves through a bank leaves a trail, a fingerprint, a story about who touched it and when, and I am the kind of woman who reads the story every day down to the penny, because I have nothing better to do than be good at the one thing the world lets me do. And the morning Don Marcelo Riva walked through those doors, I already knew what he'd come to find, because I'd found it 3 weeks before him. He came in quiet. That was the first wrong thing. A man like Marcelo Riva, 35, dark-eyed, devastatingly handsome in the way that makes a room rearrange itself around him, doesn't come to a neighborhood bank branch, alone and quiet, unless something has gone very, very bad. I'd heard the whispers, even at window 4. Money was missing from the Riva family accounts, a lot of it, and the trail pointed at the Don himself, that Marcelo Riva had been quietly bleeding his own family's shared money into a hidden account, and in that world, a man who steals from his own people doesn't get a trial, he gets a funeral. And right behind him, gliding out from his glass office, like a man who'd been waiting for this moment, came my branch manager, Curtis Dunmore. 6 years of sweetheart, just smile and count. 6 years of patting my window, like a vending machine, Mr. Riva, Dunmore said. Warm as a radiator hand already out, smile already on. What an honor, I understand. There are some questions about the account activity. He spread the papers across the counter, like a doctor delivering bad news. I pulled the records myself. I have to tell you, in confidence, the withdrawals are all authorized under your own profile. Your credentials, your authorization. He dropped his voice. But I have very good ears. I'm sure there's an explanation. But the system is very clear. It was you, or someone with your access. I watched the most dangerous man in the city take that hit, standing up, watched him understand that even here at the bank, the frame held, that the paper said he was the thief, that he'd walked in alone to clear his name, and was being handed the rope instead. Because Dunmore was good. Dunmore had built it beautifully. Every road led back to Marcelo Riva. Every road except the one only I could see. Mr. Riva, I said, window 4. Your statement's ready. He hadn't asked for a statement. Dunmore frowned at me, the fat girl speaking out of turn, and started to wave it off, but Marcelo Riva turned to window 4, and I slid the printout across the marble. Not cash. An audit trail. The real one, the deep one, the one underneath the one Dunmore had shown him. 3 lines highlighted in yellow, and a sticky note in my small, neat hand that said only these authorizations didn't come from your profile. They came from this terminal, time-stamped. It wasn't you. He read 4 lines, and the most dangerous man in the city went very, very still. The specific stillness of a man who has just been handed back his own life by the last person in the room anyone thought to look at, and then he lifted his eyes. Not to me, to Curtis Dunmore, and held them there for exactly 1 second. But before I tell you what that 1 second cost, you need to understand who I am. Because this isn't luck, this is 6 years of being invisible at window 4, and invisible, it turns out, is a kind of clearance. If you're the only one who knows you have it, my name is Junie Hartwell, I'm 30 years old, I'm a big woman, and I am extraordinarily good. At a job the world has decided requires nothing but a smile and a steady drawer. I'm a teller, window 4, 6 years. On paper, it's the simplest work there is. Take the deposit, count the cash, balance to 0 at close. But here's the secret I learned at that window. The secret that turned a small overlooked job into a quiet pride I kept warm against a lot of cold. Money talks. Almost nobody listens. Every transaction is a sentence. A string of them is a paragraph, a habit, a confession. I can look at an account's activity and tell you when a man lost his job before he tells his wife. I can see when a marriage is ending, when someone's being skimmed, when a small business is washing money on Tuesdays. I balance to the penny, not because I have to, but because the penny is where the truth lives. A drawer that's off by a penny is a drawer with a story in it. And I am the kind of woman who reads the story. I'm not a lucky woman who stumbled onto something. I am an expert who saw what an expert sees, in a chair the world built specifically, so no one would ever expect the person sitting in it to see anything at all. And if that sounds familiar, if you've ever been the person everybody underestimates, you're going to want to stay for the whole thing. Subscribe now, because Junie Hartwell's story is just getting started. Curtis Dunmore, my branch manager, the man whose name was on the glass office door, and who used that fact, the way a small man uses a big title to make everyone beneath him feel the distance. He had a routine with me, same lines, same delivery, same audience, like a comedian who never updates his material. Junie, sweetheart, he'd lean on my window too close, breath like coffee and self-importance. You don't need to understand the audit module, just smile and count. That's what you're good at, right? Smile and count. His assistants would nod every time. Junie, honey. This was his other gear, the one he used when someone important was watching. Leave the thinking to the people whose names are on the office doors. We wouldn't want to overcomplicate things. And once, this is the one I carry. He patted the top of my window in front of 2 customers. Patted it like you'd pat a vending machine. That's been a little slow, and said, "Slow and steady, our Junie. Built for comfort. Not for speed, eh?" He laughed. The customers did that thing where they look away because they're embarrassed for you and grateful it's not them. I smiled. I counted, because the smile is the job, and the job is the rent, and the rent is the life. And I told myself for the 10,000th time that what a man like Curtis Dunmore thought of my body and my brain was a weather system. Not a verdict, but here's what Dunmore never knew, because he never once thought the fat girl read anything but cash. I was studying 3 years of night classes, after 8-hour days, intermediate accounting, advanced auditing, a certification textbook under my counter, that I read on my breaks, dog-eared and highlighted to death, because window 4 was never supposed to be the end of me. It was supposed to be the floor. I climbed off. Dunmore knew about the textbook. He thought it was hilarious. "Big plans, huh?" he'd say, every time he saw it. That particular laugh. Every big woman who ever wanted more than the world allotted her knows that particular laugh. But there was one customer, in 6 years, who didn't laugh. Don Marcelo Riva, the neighborhood's Marcelo, was a closed door. Everyone walked carefully around. 35, devastatingly handsome. Dark eyes, jaw like a blade. The kind of presence that rearranges a room just by entering it. He banked with us because we were small and discreet, and because his grandfather had banked with us, and when he came in, the air tightened and the other tellers found reasons to be busy. But about a year ago, he was at my window for a transaction, and my textbook Intermediate Accounting, dog-eared, highlighted to death, slid off its shelf under the counter and hit the floor. He picked it up before I could, and instead of the laugh, instead of Dunmore's "big plans, huh?" he turned it over, read the spine, and asked me a real question. "Standards or analysis?" he said. "Which one's harder?" A real question, the kind you ask a person you assume has a mind. I blinked. Nobody had ever asked me a real question at window 4. "Analysis," I said. "The standards you just memorize. The analysis makes you think." He nodded, set the book back on my counter carefully, like it was worth something. "You're in the wrong window, Ms. Hartwell." Not unkind, just true, and he remembered. Every time after that, "How are the classes, Ms. Hartwell? My name, Ms. Hartwell." Not sweetheart, not honey, not the fat girl at 4, like I was a colleague he respected. Not a vending machine he was tolerating. I'll say the embarrassing thing, because you should hear it. I let myself, in the privacy of my kitchen table at midnight, studying under a single lamp, be a little bit in love with him. Not with the dawn, with the "you're in the wrong window," with the way he said "Ms. Hartwell," like it meant something, with the one man in 6 years who looked at window 4 and saw an accountant. It wasn't a fantasy. A woman like me, a man like that. That's not even a daydream. That's a joke I refused to tell myself out loud. It was just warmth. One radiator in a cold house. You lean toward it, knowing it isn't yours. It started the way true things start. As a small wrongness. I almost let go. There was an account, old, dormant. The kind that just sits there for years, like a house with the lights off, and one Tuesday, it took a deposit, nothing dramatic, but I know the resting heartbeat of every account that crosses my window, and a dead account waking up is like a light coming on in a house that's supposed to be empty. I noticed, filed it under odd, it happened again and again, small patient, regular money trickling into that dead account from inside the bank. Each piece structured carefully, under the amount that trips an automatic review. Somebody is building something, I whispered to myself, staring at the screen at the end of a long day, quietly, with patience, with the specific patience of someone who knows exactly how the alarms work. I did the thing I'm good at. I followed the money backward, and what I found made the floor tilt under window 4. The deposits feeding the dead account were being pulled from the Riva family's shared holdings, the big accounts, the family money. And they were authorized under Marcelo Riva's own profile, his credentials, his access, which is exactly what Dunmore would point at later. But here's what Dunmore never counted on. Because Dunmore never imagined the fat girl read the deep logs, every action in our system records which physical terminal it came from. A terminal stamp and the Marcelo Riva withdrawals, every single one, were coming from one terminal. At times the branch was closed. On days I knew for a fact the Don was nowhere near a bank. That terminal was not the Don's anything. It was the manager's office. It was Curtis Dunmore's own desk. He wasn't just skimming. Any fool can skim. Dunmore was skimming and dressing the theft to point at Marcelo Riva. So that when the family noticed the missing money, they'd find a trail that said their own Don had robbed them. The skim was protected by the frame, and the frame was protected by the fact that the only man who'd hang for it was a man nobody would dare question until it was too late for questions. $20 million, over 2 years, and a cousin named Dominic, Dom hungrier and colder than Marcelo, who'd been waiting for exactly this kind of reason. The clock I couldn't hear was already running. I sat at window 4 with all of it in my head, and every road led to a wall. Go to the police. It was mob money. I think a crime family is being defrauded is not a sentence you say to a desk sergeant and walk away from. Go over Dunmore's head inside the bank. Dunmore was the head. The regional office would hear it, as the fat teller with the night school textbook accusing a respected manager of a Baroque conspiracy. I'd be out the door, with a box of my things by lunch. Warn Marcelo Riva directly? How? I didn't have a phone number for the most dangerous man in the city. You don't call the Don, you wait, the way furniture waits. For the day the world brings him to your window. So I did the only thing I could do, the thing that turned out to matter more than any of them. I started keeping the receipts every day. Quietly, before Dunmore's nightly housekeeping could thin the logs, I pulled and preserved the deep audit trail. The terminal stamps, the times, the path from the family money to the debt account. Every piece of it saved in a folder he'd never think to look for. Because who looks in a fat teller's filing drawer? I built the rope to hang the right man, and I waited 3 weeks, praying the clock I couldn't hear wouldn't run out before the Don walked through my doors, and then, 3 weeks in, he walked through the doors. The morning I told you about, Marcelo Riva, alone, quiet, the cloud all over him. And I understood the second I saw his face that the clock was nearly out. A man like that does not come to a bank branch in person alone to sort out paperwork. He comes because the paperwork has become a matter of his life, because his own people are a breath from moving, because the bank is the last place. The truth might live, he'd come to look his accuser the numbers in the eye, and Dunmore came gliding out to make sure the numbers buried him. I had maybe 90 seconds, and one chance, the same chance furniture always has, be so beneath notice that you can act in plain sight. So I did it, across the marble, in the most boring voice I own. Mr. Riva, window 4, your statement's ready. Dunmore frowned, the fat girl speaking out of turn. He started to wave it off. Junie, that's not necessary, I've already. But Marcelo turned to me. Because of all the people in that lobby, window 4 was the one that had ever said his name, like he was a man and not a verdict. I slid the printout across the marble, 3 lines in yellow, the terminal stamps, and the sticky note small yellow in my small neat hand. These authorizations didn't come from your profile. They came from this terminal, time-stamped it wasn't you, and then quiet just for him. The only sentence that mattered, everything they say you took is sitting in a dead account, fed from the manager's desk. I have all of it, every day of it. It's not you, and I can prove it's not you. I watched the most dangerous man in the city, read 4 highlighted lines, and understand the overlooked woman at window 4 had just handed him his own life back. He went still, the real still, not anger, understanding the specific stillness of a man who has just been given the one thread that pulls him out of a noose his own family was tightening, and he straightened. And he looked at Curtis Dunmore for exactly 1 second, and the temperature in that marble lobby dropped 40 degrees, while Dunmore was still smiling. "Mr. Dunmore," Marcello said, mild as milk, "I'd like to see the activity from this terminal." He tapped the printout. "Yours, I think." I watched Dunmore's face do the arithmetic and come up with a number. He didn't like, I didn't see most of what came after. The truth. Once it's in the right hands, moves into rooms I'm not invited to. But I saw the edges. I saw Dunmore's smile curdle. I saw 2 men I hadn't noticed appear at the lobby's back door. I saw a quiet phone call made from a quiet corner. The skim was just shy of $20 million. $20 million the family thought their Dawn had stolen. $20 million sitting in a dead account, with Dunmore's fingerprints time-stamped all over the feeding of it. And what happened to Curtis Dunmore happened in the daylight, which is the part I'm proudest of. The receipts I'd kept didn't just clear the Dawn. They were clean enough to be handed over to the regional fraud office, to the actual authorities. A paper case so tidy that Dunmore went down for embezzlement the legal way, in a courtroom, with my audit trail as the spine of it. No violence, no disappearance, just a dead account, a terminal stamp, and a fat teller, who kept the receipts, and the cousin Dom who'd been sharpening a story into a knife. The story dissolved in his hands. You cannot move on a Dawn, the numbers have exonerated. Now here's where I need to ask you something. You're standing where I stood. You just saved the most dangerous man in the city. With a printout and a yellow sticky note. The whole bank was looking through you an hour ago. Now the Dawn is looking at you. Would you step into his world? Let him see you. Let yourself be seen. Trust that a powerful man's gratitude won't become a golden cage, or would you keep her window, go back to your counter, your own name, your own climb? Before a powerful man decides your future for you, drop your vote in the comments. I'll tell you what I chose and what it almost cost me. I thought that was the end of my part, save the man, go back to window 4, balance my drawer. It was not the end, because a frame that elaborates has a builder. And the builder knew, the moment the Dawn asked about his terminal, that only one person in that building could have pulled those deep logs. Only one person ever read the money. He caught me near close, the lobby empty, that last amber light coming through the tall windows, and the man who leaned across my counter was not the Curtis Dunmore who patted vending machines and laughed at textbooks. This was the real one underneath. The one who could build a $20 million frame and dress it so clean a crime family couldn't see the seams. "You think you're very clever?" he said low, no warmth left. "You think you've got a friend now?" I didn't move, I didn't breathe. "Let me explain how this works, Junie," he said my name, like it was a word he was done pretending to say nicely. "Records can be corrected, tellers make mistakes, big ones, the kind that look like theft, the kind that follow a girl to every job she'll ever apply for." He straightened, adjusted his cuffs. "I can make window 4, the last window you ever sit at. And I can make sure the file says why," he smiled. The real smile. "So here's what's going to happen. You're going to forget how to read an audit module. You're going to forget you ever saw a terminal stamp. You're going to sit at your little window and smile and count. The way you've always been told today." He tapped the counter. Tap, tap. The same way he'd always patted my window, except now the joke was the last joke. The one that ends everything. Big plans, huh? I stood there, 30 years old, the only honest reader of the money in that whole building, and I understood that the reward for saving a man's life might be the ruin of mine. I didn't hear the lobby door, neither did Dunmore. Marcello Riva had come back. For what? I didn't know yet, and he was just there. The way he was always just there. And his voice came across the marble, low and even, and without a single degree of mercy. "Step back from her window, Mr. Dunmore. I watched a man who'd patted my counter like a vending machine for 6 years. Go gray. Mr. Riva, she's confused. She's a teller. She's misread she read it better than my own people did." Marcelo crossed the lobby slow, and he came and stood at my window on my side of the line where no one in 6 years had ever stood. And he looked at Curtis Dunmore, the way a man looks at someone whose arithmetic has just been checked by a better accountant. "You built a story that would have gotten me killed by my own family," Marcelo said. And his voice was so quiet, it was almost gentle, which was worse than loud by miles. $20 million. 2 years, dressed so clean my own cousin believed it, and the only person in this city who took it apart, the only one who actually read the money, was the woman you call sweetheart, and pat like a machine. Dunmore's mouth opened. Nothing came out. She kept the receipts. Marcelo continued, "When she had every reason to look away, when you told her to smile and count, she built the one true record that proved it wasn't me. And she handed me my life, and she asked me for nothing. Not a raise, not a title, not a deal, nothing, a pause that I felt in my teeth. So hear me clearly," he said. "Nobody touches the woman at window 4. Not her job, not her record, not her name, not a reference, not a line in any file. If a single correction appears in her history, if she so much as loses a shift, I will know it was you, and I will not need a courtroom for that one." He held Dunmore's eyes. "Are we clear, or do I need to make the math simpler?" Dunmore was so clear he could barely sign his own resignation. Within the week, the law had him anyway. My audit trail as the spine of the case. And I never had trouble from anyone again, because by then, the whole neighborhood, and a quieter world behind it, knew the woman at window 4 of Meridian Savings was the most protected teller in the city. It changed everything, and I hated how it changed everything. For 6 years I'd been invisible. Invisible was lonely, but it was mine. Now I was visible as the Dawn's teller. The lucky fat girl with the head for numbers. People who'd looked through me for 6 years now nodded careful. The way you nod at something a dangerous man has put his hand over. Being a powerful man's asset is not the same as being your own woman. I had spent 3 years of night classes trying to climb off that floor under my own power. I did not study until midnight. To be lifted off it and kept, he came back a third time. After the dust alone near close, and this time the cloud was gone, and the dawn was gone from his shoulders, he stood at window 4 like a man, not a verdict, and he turned a folded paper over in his hands. "I've been trying to understand you, Ms. Hartwell," Marcelo said. "And I can't, so I'll ask." He set his hands on the counter. "Carefully. The way you set down something you don't want to break. You owed me nothing. You could have let the numbers say what the manager wanted them to say, and gone home perfectly safe. Instead, you spent 3 weeks building the one record that could destroy a powerful man, for a man you don't know, and you handed it over and asked for nothing." He looked at me. Dark eyes, just a man's. "In my life, everyone wants something you never have. Why? I should have been smart, should have asked for money, security, a way out. Instead, 6 years of silence came up my throat all at once, and I told him the truth, which is the only reckless thing I've done besides keeping those receipts. Because you weren't a stranger to me," I said. "That's the thing you've got wrong." He waited. "A year ago, you picked my textbook up off the floor. You asked me a real question. You said I was in the wrong window, and you said it like you meant I was worth a better one." My voice cracked. I let it. "Do you know what that is to me? One person in 6 years who looked at window 4 and saw an accountant instead of a fat girl with a drawer. You called me Ms. Hartwell. You remembered my classes. Junie. I didn't save a stranger," I said. "I saved the only man who ever saw what I could be, and I'd have done it if it cost me the job, and I don't want anything for it." I looked at him, and didn't look away, and that's exactly why I can't be what they're all whispering. I am now your teller, your lucky charm, your clever pet who kept the receipts. I straightened. "I spent 3 years trying to climb off that floor myself, Mr. Riva. I won't be lifted off it and kept. I'd rather stay at window 4 on my own feet than be your favorite possession in a better chair." He went so quiet, the ticking of the bank clock was the loudest thing in the room. "You think I came to keep you?" he said slowly, "like an asset, a breath. Miss Hartwell, for a year I've known there was a first-rate mind sitting in the wrong window, and I told myself it wasn't my business. And then that mind saved my life from a desk, while 6 men I trusted saw nothing. He set the folded paper on the counter. I don't want to own you. I want to be understood by you, the way you understood those numbers. You looked at what everyone else missed, and you didn't look away. Nobody has ever done both. If this were a fairy tale, I'd have climbed through the teller window and into his arms. But I've sat on the working side of a counter my whole life, and I know exactly how fast being seen by a powerful man curdles into being kept by one. I would not trade climbing under my own power for being lifted and owned. They are closer to the same thing than anyone admits, so I told him my terms across the marble, with window 4 still between us. If you mean it, I said, here's how it goes. I finish my certification and I get my own share the way I earned the right to. On the work, not on your hand. One finger. You don't make me a manager. I make me a manager. If you want to help, you do it the way you'd help anyone with a good head, a fair reference, an honest door, never a fixed game. 2 fingers. You don't decide things for me to take care of me. You ask me like I'm a woman with a say in her own life. 3 fingers. And if you want to know me, you come to window 4 in the daylight where the whole branch can see, and you court me like a woman worth being seen with. Slow in the open, no money, no power, no grand gestures. I held his eyes. And the day you treat me like a thing you own, even a thing you love, we're done. I go back to balancing my own drawer and I'll be fine. Because I was building my own life, before you ever picked my book up off the floor. Marcelo Riva, who has never in his life been told to wait, looked at me a long moment. And then the corner of his mouth did something I'd never seen the city's Don do. It went soft, almost shy, 35 years old and undone at a bank teller's window. Those are hard terms, Miss Hartwell. They're the only ones I've got. Good, he said. I've spent my whole life with people who offered me what was easy. He picked up the folded paper. It was a job posting, a fraud analyst position at a real firm, an honest door, and he slid it under the glass. Not as a gift, as information. A thing I was free to want or not. And then he reached into his jacket and set something else on the marble between us. Small, yellow, folded soft from being carried. My sticky note. It wasn't you. I kept this, he said quietly, because 4 words on a yellow square of paper are the only honest thing anyone's handed me in 35 years. He gave me the nod. The same nod he'd always given, except now it meant something else entirely. I'll see you in the daylight, Junie Hartwell. At window 4. While it's still your window, and he did. So here's where I am now. I passed my certification. Sat for it the same month. All this happened. And I passed it on my own brain. I did not take the job he slid under my glass. I took a better one. I found myself. Because that was the whole point. I read money for a living now, properly. In a chair with my name on a little plate, J. Hartwell. And the irony is not lost on me that the skill the world refused to notice for 6 years turned out to be worth a man's life and my own future both. Marcelo comes around, in the daylight. He sits across a desk from me now, my desk, while I explain something about the work, and he listens like a man who finds being understood. The rarest luxury he owns. He has not once tried to lift me or keep me or own me, he asks. He's slow at it. A man learning a new language late and watching the most dangerous man in the city be careful and humble and uncertain with a big woman the world wrote off. That, it turns out, is the only kind of being seen I ever wanted. And the sticky note, it wasn't you, sits on my desk between us. Worn soft on both sides now, his from carrying it in his jacket since that morning. Mine from touching it late at night, when I wonder if I dreamed the whole thing, the smallest thing in the room, the heaviest thing we own. Because 4 words on a yellow square of paper saved a man's life, and a man's decision to believe the fat teller over the frame saved mine. I won't tell you it's simple. He is what he is. His world is what it is. There are nights I close my own door and wonder what I've let myself walk toward, but I know this. I spent 6 years being the fat nobody at window 4, and the one time it counted the nobody was the only one who could read the truth. And then I had the harder courage to refuse to let saving him cost me the self I'd built. One night class at a time. They called me the fat nobody at window 4. And the nobody was the only one who could see the frame, and then the only one brave enough to refuse the gilded cage and balance her own books on her own feet. If you were me, saw what no one else could, saved his life, set your terms, watch the most dangerous man in the city actually try to meet them, would you step into his world? Or would you keep your own counter, your own name on the plate, and stay at her window? Tell me below, and if you've ever been the one they pat like a vending machine, the nobody at window 4, the one who reads the truth no one thinks you can read. Here, the only thing I know for sure now. Being underestimated is not the same as being small. Sometimes it just means you're the only one in the building, paying attention, and one day that might be worth more than anyone ever bet on you, maybe even your whole life. Now, if you haven't already, hit subscribe, turn on the bell. Because next week's story, she wasn't at a window, she was behind a locked door, and the Don didn't walk in asking for help. He walked in bleeding. You don't want to miss what she did. One more thing before the window closes. If Junie's story added up for you, there's a small way to pass it forward. On your YouTube app, there's a hype button below this video. Tap it. 3 free points every week. It's one small deposit. But sometimes one small deposit is the receipt that changes everything.